when my mother told me my 28th birthday was canceled so we could host a last-minute promotion party for my sister. My jaw dropped. My husband tried to speak up, but my mom cut him off, laughing in my face. "Your sister is actually accomplishing something with her life," she said, holding up a sparkling pair of crystal glasses. "You're just living in the shadows. Be a good daughter and clean up after the guests." They thought I'd smile, cry in secret, and take the humiliation like I always did. They thought I had nowhere else to go. But what my mother didn't realize was that the house she was standing in, the very house she was using to throw my sister's lavish celebration, didn't belong to her anymore. And in less than 24 hours, her biggest mistake was about to cost her everything. My name is Claire. I am 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have worked as a dedicated high school English teacher. I built a modest, comfortable life with my husband, Mark. I never asked for luxury or grand gestures. All I ever wanted from my family was a little respect and fairness. But when I pulled into the driveway of my mother Eleanor's home on a chilly Saturday evening, expecting a quiet family dinner to celebrate my birthday, I knew instantly that something was terribly wrong. Professional catering vans blocked the garage. Florist assistants were hauling massive arches of white lilies onto the front porch, and upbeat music was already echoing through the double front doors. When I walked inside, my mother didn't even greet me with a kiss or a simple happy birthday. Instead, she thrust a stack of linen napkins into my hands and told me that my birthday dinner was off. My younger sister, Chloe, had just landed a mid-level corporate promotion, and according to Eleanor, a real achievement deserved a real celebration. Chloe stood in the center of the living room wearing a sparkling silk dress, sipping champagne and beaming as my mother paraded her in front of arriving guests. When Mark tried to gently remind my mother that we had planned this evening weeks ago for my 28th birthday, Eleanor simply scoffed, telling me to stop being selfish and make myself useful by helping the kitchen staff. This kind of open favoritism was far from new. It had been the soundtrack of my entire life. Growing up, Chloe was the golden child who could do no wrong. When she turned 16, my mother bought her a brand new convertible, while I worked part-time at a local diner just to pay for my own second-hand sedan's insurance. When Chloe went off to college, my mother willingly depleted her personal savings to pay every cent of her tuition, dorm fees, and lifestyle expenses. Meanwhile, I took out student loans, worked 2 jobs simultaneously, and put myself through university without a single dime of assistance from home. Yet, despite being treated like an afterthought, I was always the one my mother turned to when real crisis struck. 2 years ago, Eleanor's reckless spending and poor financial management finally caught up with her. She was facing immediate, humiliating foreclosure on the childhood home she loved so much. Desperate, sobbing, and on the brink of losing everything, she begged me for help. Chloe, who was already working her corporate job, suddenly had endless excuses about why she couldn't contribute a single penny. Out of a deep, naive sense of filial duty, I stepped in. I took on a massive personal financial obligation and cleared all of Eleanor's debts. Yet, once the dust settled, Eleanor went right back to giving Chloe all the credit for family stability, treating me as nothing more than the quiet, weak daughter who had simply done what was expected of her. Back at the party, the atmosphere grew increasingly suffocating. As dozens of neighborhood guests and Chloe's friends filled the rooms, Eleanor kept finding subtle ways to humiliate me. She handed me an embroidered apron and instructed me to refill the wine glasses and clear the dirty plates from the appetizers. Whenever a guest asked if I was Eleanor's other daughter, my mother would quickly interject, brushing off my teaching career as a simple little hobby while exaggerating Chloe's corporate job into making her sound like an international executive. The absolute flashpoint came during the main toast. Chloe stood at the top of the grand staircase, glass in hand, looking down at the crowd. With a smug smile, she publicly thanked our mother for throwing her such an expensive party, before looking directly at me and making a sharp, cruel joke about how some people in the family were content settling for mediocrity, while others were born to lead. The entire room erupted into polite laughter, and Eleanor beamed with immense pride, nodding along to every word. I stood near the kitchen door, holding a tray of empty champagne flutes, feeling the eyes of 50 people on me. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, a icy, crystalline clarity washed over me. I realized that my years of kindness had been mistaken for weakness. I quietly set the tray down on the counter, took off the apron, grabbed my purse, and walked out the back door into the cool night air without saying a single word to anyone. When Mark and I arrived home, I didn't break down into tears. I went straight to my home office, unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk, and pulled out a thick black leather briefcase containing official real estate and financial documents. You see, when I had saved my mother from losing her home 2 years prior, I hadn't just handed her a blank check. My husband and my real estate attorney had strictly warned me against throwing my hard-earned savings into a black hole. So, under their guidance, I had purchased the deed to the property outright. I became the sole legal owner of the house and all the land it sat on. Out of love, I had allowed my mother to continue living there under a specialized lease agreement. It was a rent-free tenancy, but it was bound by strict legal conditions regarding property care, behavior, and mutual respect. Furthermore, 6 months ago, during a routine property update, Eleanor had signed a legal agreement confirming the exact terms of my ownership without even bothering to read the fine print, assuming it was just a tedious property tax document. She was so convinced of her own intellectual superiority over me that she never imagined for a second that her quiet, passive daughter actually held complete control over her entire living situation. The very next morning, at 8 o'clock sharp, I returned to the house. But I didn't come alone. Accompanying me was my real estate attorney, David, alongside 2 certified property inspectors carrying clipboards. When I unlocked the front door, the house was an absolute disaster area. Confetti covered the hardwood floors, half-empty wine glasses stained the antique wooden side tables, and trash was scattered across every counter. Eleanor and Chloe were sitting at the kitchen island in their robes, nursing hangovers amidst the mess. The moment Eleanor saw me, her face contorted in anger. She began shouting at me, demanding to know why I had abandoned my duties the night before and left her to deal with the messy aftermath of Chloe's party. I didn't flinch. I waited patiently until she finished her rant, and then I gestured to David. My attorney stepped forward, unzipped his leather folder, and handed my mother an official legal document. Eleanor scoffed, waving her hand dismissively, asking what kind of joke this was. But as David calmly explained that he was serving her a formal notice of lease termination and immediate eviction, the color completely drained from her face. He outlined every violation of her tenancy agreement, including the unauthorized commercial catering, the unapproved structural changes she had made to the backyard for the party, and the severe property negligence visible right in front of us. Eleanor's hands trembled violently as she looked from the paper to my face, realizing for the very first time that I wasn't just her daughter. I was her landlord. Chloe jumped out of her chair, her hungover eyes wide with fury as she tried to pull rank. She stepped into my space, screaming that I was being absurd, jealous, and pathetic, threatening to hire the best lawyers in the city to destroy me for harassing our mother. But David simply reached back into his briefcase and handed Chloe a separate official envelope. It was a formal itemized demand for property damages, alongside a bill for unauthorized commercial use of the premises for her corporate event. David coldly informed her that if the balance wasn't paid in full within 7 business days, we would be filing a formal suit that would directly notify her employer's ethics board of her pending litigation. Hearing that, Chloe froze instantly, the smug arrogance vanishing from her expression as she realized her precious new corporate reputation was suddenly hanging by a thread. Eleanor broke down into heavy, desperate tears. She sank onto a bar stool, grabbing at my sleeves, begging for mercy. She tried to play the family card, reminding me of all the sacrifices she claimed to have made for me as a mother, asking how I could possibly treat my own blood this way. I looked down at her with complete composure, pulled my sleeve out of her grasp, and reminded her of the exact words she had sneered at me just 12 hours earlier. "You told me I was living in the shadows," I said softly. "You told me my life didn't matter compared to Chloe's. Now you have 30 days to pack up your things and find somewhere else to live." For the first time, Chloe had no snappy comeback, standing paralyzed in complete shame as her polished image crumbled before the inspectors. Eleanor kept sobbing, realizing that no amount of emotional manipulation could undo years of cruelty. They finally understood that their relentless disrespect had destroyed their own safety net. Over the following month, the fallout was absolute. Eleanor tried everything to turn our extended family against me, launching a smear campaign on social media and calling every relative who would listen. But when David sent an official letter to the family outlining the exact financial history, proving that I had single-handedly paid off her massive debt 2 years ago while she treated me like hired help, the calls stopped and the support vanished. Chloe's glamorous, high-paying corporate job turned out to be far less lucrative than she had bragged. She couldn't afford to buy our mother a house, let alone pay for her lavish lifestyle. Forced to face reality, Eleanor had to pack up decades of belongings and downsize into a tiny, cramped one-bedroom apartment in a noisy part of town, funded barely by Chloe's modest salary. As for me, I put the house on the market 30 days later. Because of its prime location and the improvements I had made over the years, it sold quickly in a competitive bidding war for a massive profit. Mark and I took those proceeds, cleared the rest of our own minor debts, and purchased our dream home on a quiet, tree-lined property near the coast, complete with a beautiful garden where we can host the people who truly love and respect us. Cutting that toxic dynamic out of my life was the most liberating thing I have ever done. Looking back, my mother thought canceling my birthday was just another harmless way to put me in my place. She never imagined that her cruelest moment would finally give me the courage to stand up, claim what was rightfully mine, and walk away forever. Would you have given your mother another chance after how she treated you? Or would you have handed her the eviction notice, just like I did? Comment your thoughts below, and let me know what city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached.